a devoted father of two, disappeared during his routine morning jog in a peaceful suburban community, leaving his family devastated and authorities baffled. But just 45 days after his body was discovered, his grieving widow marries a man recently released from prison, leading detectives to uncover hidden text messages that expose the shocking truth behind his brutal murder. Oakwood Heights was the kind of neighborhood where people moved to escape the chaos of city life. Lined with mature oak trees and well-maintained homes, the community prided itself on its safety, good schools, and tight-knit atmosphere. For Richard Thompson, this had been home for nearly a decade, a place where he and his wife Veronica raised their two children, Sophia and Noah, now 10 and 8. Richard, 42, worked as a senior accountant at Anderson Financial Group, a position that afforded his family a comfortable lifestyle. Colleagues described him as meticulous, principled, and unfailingly reliable. Standing at 6 feet tall with salt and pepper hair and an athletic build, maintained through years of disciplined exercise, Richard was known throughout the neighborhood for his dedication to fitness. Every morning, without fail, he would rise at 5:30, lace up his running shoes, and embark on a 5-mile jog through the community and the adjoining nature preserve. Rain or shine, weekday or weekend, the routine never changed. Neighbors setting out for early shifts would wave as he passed, his steady pace and friendly smile becoming a fixture of Oakwood Heights mornings. Richard was clockwork, said Theodore Wilson, who lived 3 doors down. You could set your watch by when he would pass my driveway. 5:55, every single day. His wife Veronica presented the perfect complement to his stability. At 38, she had built a successful career as a real estate agent for prestige properties, known for her keen eye for market trends and impeccable staging skills. With her polished appearance, designer wardrobe, and charismatic personality, Veronica excelled at making connections and closing deals. The couple appeared to balance each other perfectly, his steady, methodical nature alongside her vibrant energy. From the outside, the Thompsons epitomized suburban success. Their Tudor-style home, with its manicured lawn, hosted summer barbecues and holiday gatherings. Their children participated in sports and music lessons. Their social media accounts showcased family vacations, anniversary celebrations, and volunteer work at the local food bank. They seemed like the perfect couple, recalled Dana Patel, who served with Veronica on the elementary school fundraising committee. Richard always supported whatever charity event Veronica organized, and she spoke so highly of him. They finished each other's sentences at neighborhood gatherings. But beneath the carefully cultivated image of domestic bliss, fractures had begun to form. Neighbors would later recall subtle signs: raised voices coming from the Thompson home late at night, tension during community events, and Veronica staying out increasingly late for work functions. Yet nothing prepared the community for what happened on that crisp autumn morning when Richard Thompson laced up his running shoes for the last time. The morning started like any other. Veronica would later tell police through tears. He kissed me goodbye while I was still half asleep, said he would make pancakes for the kids when he got back. That was the last time I saw my husband alive. What no one knew then was that forces had already been set in motion. Forces that would transform their quiet community into the setting for a crime that would captivate national attention and expose the darkest secrets hidden behind Oakwood Heights' pristine facade. Monday, October 4th, dawned clear and cool, perfect running weather. Richard Thompson stepped out of his front door at 5:45, dressed in his usual running gear, black compression leggings, a lightweight blue jacket, and his favorite worn-in running shoes. Security footage from a neighbor's doorbell camera captured him stretching briefly on his front lawn before setting off at an easy pace down Oakwood Drive. His route that morning followed the same path he had taken hundreds of times before, through the residential streets past the community center and into Oakwood Nature Preserve, a 200-acre woodland area with well-maintained trails popular among joggers and nature enthusiasts. The preserve offered a peaceful respite from suburban life, with dense forest and a small lake at its center. By 7:15, when Richard had not returned home, Veronica began calling his cell phone. By 8:30, with no response, and his office reporting he had not arrived for work, she contacted the police. Mrs. Thompson was hysterical when she called, recalled dispatcher Olivia Rodriguez. She kept saying this was completely out of character for her husband, that he never deviated from his schedule. Officer Gregory Taylor was the first to respond to the Thompson residence. The wife was pacing, constantly checking her phone. The children were confused, asking when Daddy was coming home. It was clear something was wrong. Within hours, a search operation commenced. Police officers, canine units and volunteers from the community fanned out across the neighborhood and into the nature preserve. They called Richard's name, checked security cameras, and interviewed anyone who might have seen him that morning. It was Park Ranger Samuel Collins who made the grim discovery at 4:17 that afternoon. In a densely wooded area, approximately 30 yards off the main trail, partially concealed by fallen leaves and underbrush, lay Richard Thompson's body. The back of his skull had been crushed by what medical examiners would later determine was a heavy, blunt object, possibly a hammer or crowbar. His running watch had stopped at 6:23, less than 40 minutes into his morning routine. The scene was disturbing, Detective Nathan Cooper would note in his initial report. The victim appeared to have been ambushed from behind with considerable force. There were no signs of a prolonged struggle, suggesting he never saw his attacker coming. The news devastated the community. Oakwood Heights had not seen a homicide in over 12 years. Parents kept their children indoors, joggers abandoned their solo routines, and a palpable fear settled over the previously peaceful neighborhood. When Detective Cooper delivered the news to Veronica Thompson, her reaction appeared appropriately devastating. She collapsed into the detective's arms, her body racked with sobs, as she asked repeatedly if there had been some mistake. The children were staying with Veronica's mother, spared the immediate shock of learning their father would never return. Her grief seemed genuine, Cooper would later testify. Nothing about her initial response raised any red flags. The following days brought an outpouring of community support. Meals appeared on the Thompson doorstep. A memorial of flowers, notes and running shoes grew at the entrance to the nature preserve. Veronica, dressed in black and visibly thinner, accepted condolences with tear-filled eyes at a candlelight vigil, attended by over 300 people. "Richard was the best of us," she said in a trembling voice to the assembled crowd. "A devoted father, a loving husband, a man who brightened every room he entered. Whoever took him from us has destroyed our family and left a hole that can never be filled." The investigation proceeded methodically, but with frustrating results. The murder weapon was never recovered. Rain in the hours following the discovery had washed away potential evidence. No witnesses came forward with useful information, and the remote location had no surveillance coverage. Detective Cooper and his team explored multiple angles. Was it a random act of violence by a transient passing through the area? A case of mistaken identity? Could Richard have had enemies no one knew about? Financial records showed no irregularities. Colleagues reported no conflicts. His digital footprint revealed nothing suspicious. Richard Thompson appeared to be exactly what everyone believed. A decent man who had the misfortune of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. 2 weeks into the investigation, the first unusual note appeared in Detective Cooper's observations. During a follow-up interview at the Thompson home, he noticed a change in Veronica's demeanor. She seemed composed, he wrote. The raw grief had transitioned to something more controlled. She spoke of moving forward and finding a new normal. While everyone grieves differently, the shift seemed accelerated. That same afternoon, Cooper received a call from Richard's mother, Catherine Thompson. "Detective," she said, her voice strained. "I know my daughter-in-law is suffering, but something does not feel right. Last weekend, I stopped by unexpectedly to bring some of Richard's childhood mementos for the grandchildren. There was a man there, in the kitchen, comfortable as could be. Veronica introduced him as an old friend, helping with household repairs. But the way they looked at each other, it troubled me deeply." This seemingly minor observation would be the first thread that, when pulled, would begin to unravel the carefully constructed facade surrounding Richard Thompson's murder. The autopsy report arrived on Detective Cooper's desk 23 days after Richard Thompson's body was discovered. The findings confirmed the initial assessment. Death resulted from blunt force trauma to the posterior cranium, delivered with significant force from a position behind and slightly above the victim. The medical examiner estimated that death had been instantaneous or nearly so. The angle and force suggest the perpetrator was right-handed, approximately 5 feet 10 inches to 6 feet tall, and possessed considerable upper body strength, noted Dr. Priya Sharma, the county medical examiner. The attack was precise and demonstrated intent to kill rather than injure. Toxicology reports showed no substances in Richard's system beyond caffeine, consistent with his morning coffee before the run. His stomach contents aligned with Veronica's statement that he had eaten only a banana and protein bar before leaving home. With no forensic breakthrough, Detective Cooper focused on building a more complete picture of the victim's life. He re-interviewed colleagues, friends and family members, seeking any detail that might have been overlooked. During this process, a subtle pattern began to emerge. Several individuals mentioned Richard seemed preoccupied or troubled in the weeks before his death. His administrative assistant noted he had begun taking personal calls in private, stepping outside the office, rather than speaking at his desk. His running partner mentioned Richard had cancelled their weekend trail runs 3 times in the previous month, something he had never done before. "He told me he needed to be home more," said Patrick O'Neill, who had trained with Richard for the past 4 years. "Said things were complicated at home. When I asked if everything was okay with Veronica, he changed the subject." Intrigued by these whispers of domestic discord, Cooper assigned Officer Zoe Franklin to conduct discreet surveillance of Veronica Thompson. Within days, Franklin had something to report. "Subject has received multiple visits from the same individual," her notes read. "Male, approximately 45 years old, 6 feet tall, muscular build, with distinctive tattoos on both arms. Arrives after the children are in school, stays for 2 to 3 hours, departs before they return. Behavior suggests an intimate relationship." A background check on the visitor revealed his identity. Thomas Blackwell, 45, released from Riverside Correctional Facility 4 months earlier, after serving 7 years for aggravated assault and armed robbery. His criminal record dated back to his early 20s, with multiple convictions for theft, fraud, and violence. "What really caught my attention," Cooper later explained, was that Blackwell had been represented during his most recent parole hearing by Horizon Legal Aid, where Veronica Thompson volunteered monthly as part of her community service work. The connection was too specific to be coincidental. Financial investigations revealed another troubling pattern. In the 6 months before Richard's murder, Veronica had opened a separate bank account, unknown to her husband. Into this account she had deposited nearly $30,000 from cash withdrawals made from their joint savings, money Richard had been setting aside for the children's college education. The withdrawals were carefully spaced, noted financial investigator Diane Reynolds. $1,000 here, $1,500 there, never enough at once to trigger Richard's attention, but substantial when viewed in aggregate. While the circumstantial evidence was mounting, the investigation still lacked a direct connection to the murder itself. That changed when police executed a search warrant on Veronica's cell phone and computer 38 days after Richard's death. Digital forensics specialist Marcus Wong made the breakthrough. Despite attempts to delete the communication history, we recovered substantial evidence of a relationship between Veronica Thompson and Thomas Blackwell, dating back more than 3 years, including the period of his incarceration. The correspondence strongly suggests they were romantically involved before, during, and after his prison term. Most damning were messages exchanged in the weeks before Richard's murder. "Veronica, I cannot take another day of pretending. He suspects something. Thomas, soon, baby. Just a little longer. Everything's arranged. Veronica, what if something goes wrong? Thomas, trust me, he jogs same route every day. My friend will handle it. Clean, quick." Then we wait a respectable time. "Veronica, how long? Thomas, month or 2. Then no more hiding." Cooper assembled his team to review the evidence. "We have motive, opportunity, and now conspiracy," he told them. "What we still need is the murder weapon and the third party," this friend mentioned in the messages. Before they could pursue additional warrants, however, an unexpected development accelerated the case dramatically. 45 days after Richard Thompson's murder, Veronica Thompson and Thomas Blackwell were married in a private ceremony at the county courthouse. The news of Veronica Thompson's marriage spread through Oakwood Heights like wildfire. A community still mourning the loss of Richard Thompson was stunned to learn his widow had remarried so quickly, and to a man with a criminal record, no less. "I saw them leaving the courthouse," reported Carol Jenkins, who worked in the records department. "She was wearing a cream-colored dress, carrying roses. They were laughing, laughing. Her husband not even cold in his grave. And there she was, beaming like a newlywed on a magazine cover." The marriage provided Detective Cooper with the justification needed to intensify the investigation. Judge Francesca Diaz approved expanded search warrants for both Veronica's and Thomas's communications, financial records, and premises. The search of the garden shed behind the Thompson home yielded the first physical evidence connecting them to the crime. Hidden beneath a false bottom in a toolbox was a burner phone containing text messages to a contact listed only as L, with coordinates matching the murder location and confirmation of payment. $15,000 transferred through a cryptocurrency platform. Forensic analysis of Thomas Blackwell's laptop revealed searches for undetectable poisons, accidents that look natural, and blunt force trauma survival rates. His browser history showed multiple visits to a website detailing the running trails at Oakwood Nature Preserve, with particular attention to secluded areas off the main paths. "He was methodical," commented digital forensic specialist Wong. "He used private browsing and encryption, but failed to completely wipe the system. These fragments tell a story of premeditation stretching back months." The cryptocurrency transaction led investigators to Leonard Valdez, a 34-year-old former cellmate of Blackwell, with a history of violence for hire. When confronted with the evidence at his apartment in a neighboring county, Valdez attempted to flee, but was apprehended after a brief pursuit. Under interrogation, faced with overwhelming evidence, Valdez confessed to his role as the hired killer. According to his statement, Blackwell had approached him shortly after his release from prison, with a proposition, $20,000 to eliminate a problem that stood in the way of Blackwell's future happiness. "Thomas told me everything about this guy's routine," Valdez admitted. "How he jogged the same route every morning. How he always took the side trail by the big oak tree. How he would be alone, no witnesses," said his girlfriend. The wife had been feeding him information for months. "All I had to do was wait in the trees, hit him once from behind, and walk away. Easiest money I ever made." The murder weapon, a steel crowbar, was recovered from a drainage ditch 2 miles from the crime scene, with traces of Richard's DNA still present despite Valdez's attempts to clean it. With Valdez's confession and the mounting physical evidence, Detective Cooper obtained arrest warrants for both Veronica Thompson and Thomas Blackwell on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation of murder, and first-degree homicide. The arrests were made simultaneously to prevent either suspect from warning the other. Veronica was taken into custody while showing a house to prospective buyers. Thomas was arrested at a local gym. Neither was granted bail. In separate interrogation rooms, each was confronted with the evidence against them. Thomas Blackwell maintained his innocence for nearly 4 hours before finally breaking down. "It was her idea," he claimed, his previous confidence crumbling. "She reached out to me when I was still inside, started visiting, telling me about her unhappy marriage, how Richard controlled everything, how she was trapped. She promised we could be together if Richard was out of the picture, said they had $1 million life insurance policy. New identities, new start. I was stupid. Love makes you stupid." Veronica, by contrast, remained composed throughout her interrogation. Even when presented with the recovered text messages, financial transactions, and Blackwell's confession, she maintained a facade of innocence. "Those messages are being misinterpreted," she insisted. "Yes, I had feelings for Thomas. Yes, I helped him after his release, because I believed in second chances, but I never ever wanted Richard dead. I loved my husband." Thomas must have misunderstood my complaints about the marriage as something more sinister. It was only when Detective Cooper played a recording of Richard's children, asking when they could see their mother, that Veronica's composure finally cracked. "What have I done?" she whispered, covering her face. "What have I done to my family?" Over the next 3 hours, Veronica Thompson provided a full confession, revealing details that shocked even the veteran detectives. The affair had begun 3.5 years earlier, when she met Thomas Blackwell at a fundraiser for prison reform. Their connection was immediate and intense. When Blackwell was arrested 6 months later for a violent assault during a bar fight, Veronica maintained contact through prison visits disguised as volunteer work. Their relationship deepened, with Veronica becoming increasingly convinced that Richard was the only obstacle to her happiness. "I convinced myself Richard was the villain," she admitted, "that he was controlling, distant, holding me back. I rewrote our entire marriage, in my head, to justify what I was planning. The truth is, he was a good man, a good father. His only crime was being predictable, stable, everything I thought I wanted until I met Thomas." The most disturbing revelation came when Veronica explained why they had moved so quickly to marriage after Richard's death. The insurance company was investigating the claim. "Thomas thought if we were married, I could not be compelled to testify against him if suspicions arose. We thought we were being clever. Instead, we announced our guilt to the entire community." As the full picture emerged, investigators discovered Veronica had withdrawn an additional $50,000 from accounts Richard had maintained for his parents' care. This money had been promised to Valdez as a bonus for his silence, though only $5,000 had been paid before the arrests. The case against all three conspirators was airtight. What had begun as a seemingly random act of violence in a peaceful community had been exposed as a calculated murder plot driven by greed, infatuation, and a profound moral failure. The trial of Veronica Thompson, Thomas Blackwell, and Leonard Valdez began 11 months after Richard Thompson's murder. The courthouse overflowed with media, community members, and the grieving family of the victim. Prosecutor Miranda Johnson laid out the state's case methodically, presenting the mountain of evidence collected by Detective Cooper and his team. Digital communications, financial records, forensic evidence, and Valdez's confession painted a comprehensive picture of conspiracy and premeditation. "This was not a crime of passion," Johnson told the jury in her opening statement. "This was not a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a calculated elimination of a good man, whose only mistake was trusting his wife." The defendants spent months planning his death, discussed it in cold detail, and celebrated their success by marrying within weeks of the murder. The defense attorneys attempted various strategies. Veronica's lawyer portrayed her as a victim of Blackwell's manipulation, a lonely woman seduced by attention and false promises. Blackwell's attorney suggested he had never intended for the murder to actually occur, claiming his messages were fantasy talk that Valdez misinterpreted. Valdez's public defender argued his client was merely a tool used by the other defendants, deserving of leniency for his cooperation. None of these approaches gained traction with the jury, particularly after they heard the recorded conversations and read the text messages exchanged by the conspirators. Most damaging was the testimony of Richard's children, now 11 and 9, who described their father's loving nature and their mother's increasingly distant behavior in the months before his death. "Daddy always tucked us in," Sophia Thompson testified, her small voice steady despite the circumstances. "He knew all our favorite books and did different voices for each character. He never missed a school play or soccer game. He promised to teach me to drive when I turned 16. Now he cannot." After 7 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts for all three defendants. At the sentencing hearing, Judge Robert Gonzalez addressed each defendant individually. "To Leonard Valdez, you took a human life for money. Though you have cooperated with authorities, nothing can diminish the calculated nature of your actions." Valdez received 35 years to life. To Thomas Blackwell, "You manipulated and exploited a relationship to orchestrate a murder for financial gain, showing contempt for human life and the family you helped destroy." Blackwell received life without possibility of parole. To Veronica Thompson, "You betrayed the most fundamental trust between spouses and parents. You robbed your children of their father and conspired to have the father of your children killed, all while maintaining a facade of grieving widow. Your actions demonstrate a profound moral corruption." She received life without possibility of parole, plus 20 years for the financial crimes. As the defendants were led away, Richard's mother Catherine approached the bench and asked to make a statement. "My son loved running because he said it cleared his mind and helped him see the world more clearly," she said, her voice steady despite her grief. "He believed in honesty, hard work, and above all, being present for his children." We will make sure Sophia and Noah know their father for who he truly was, not the distorted version created to justify this horrible act. In the aftermath of the trial, Oakwood Heights began the long process of healing. The nature preserve where Richard was killed was renamed Thompson Memorial Park, with a small plaque marking the spot where he fell. The community established a scholarship fund in his name for students pursuing careers in accounting or finance. Detective Nathan Cooper, reflecting on the case a year later, noted the profound impact it had on his approach to investigations. "This case taught me to look beyond the obvious," he explained. "What appeared to be a random act of violence was actually an intimate betrayal. It reminds us that sometimes the greatest dangers are not strangers lurking in the shadows, but those closest to us, whom we trust without question." Richard's children, now living with his parents, continue to struggle with the dual trauma of losing their father to murder and their mother to prison. Child psychologist Dr. Hannah Lewis, who works with the family, emphasizes the importance of honest, age-appropriate conversations. "Children are resilient, but they need truth and stability to heal," she noted. Sophia and Noah are learning that it is possible to honor their father's memory while processing complex feelings about their mother. Their journey will be lifelong, but with proper support, they can find their way forward. The case of Richard Thompson's murder serves as a sobering reminder that appearances can be deceiving. Behind the facade of the perfect suburban life, hidden resentments, secret relationships, and unchecked greed created the conditions for a tragedy that forever changed a community. For those who followed the case, perhaps the most important lesson is the value of paying attention to subtle changes in behavior, unexpected relationships, and patterns that seem out of character. In a world where people carefully curate their public images, sometimes the most significant clues lie in what changes, rather than what remains constant. If you or someone you know is trapped in a relationship with warning signs of control, manipulation, or potential violence, please reach out to support services in your community. No one should face these challenges alone, and early intervention can prevent tragedies like the one that took Richard Thompson from his family and community. And if this story affected you, please consider subscribing to True Crime Village for more in-depth explorations of cases that illuminate the darker aspects of human nature, not merely to fascinate, but to educate and protect. By understanding how these tragedies unfold, perhaps we can recognize warning signs in our own communities before they escalate into violence. Remember, the most important lessons often come from the most difficult stories. Thank you for listening.